Hey, good morning, Trondheim friends, and welcome to this week's episode of Patio Ponderings. Unfortunately, it is yet another week in which my patio is indoors due to the winter loveliness going on outside. I am here in the sanctuary at Trondheim Church, and you can see the pulpit in the background. I wonder if you've noticed when you've been into churches, so often the pulpit sits up a little higher. And that is for ease of vision for the listeners and hearing. But if you look in some old churches, sometimes you see the pulpit way up high, and there's something else going on there too. When the speaker is elevated, it gives an impression of authority. And for right or wrong, better or worse, and that's what I've been wondering about this week, is authority. Because this past week, we finished up in Sunday morning with the Sermon on the Mount, this 3-chapter long teaching that Jesus does. And the last couple verses give this interesting little summary of the crowd's response to all the things that Jesus has covered in this sermon. And here's what these verses say. This is chapter 7, verse 28 to 29 in the Gospel of Matthew. When Jesus finished these words, the crowds were amazed at his teaching because he was teaching them like someone with authority and not like their legal experts. Now, I find this really curious because the legal experts are experts. And isn't that something by nature that gives a person authority? So one thing to first consider here is that when we are talking about legal experts in this context, we're not talking about civil law experts. We're talking about religious law experts, okay? Which makes us even more curiouser and curiouser, if you will. Because these people have indeed been very much the authority on religious life. And now here comes Jesus with all these teachings, many of which are different than what they've been taught, or they've been given a new way for the people to think about them. And we hear that Jesus has an authority not like the legal experts. So this might sound like just an interesting little point of wonderment, but there's something crucial in this little summary that I think it's really important for us to think about today. We look to all kinds of things and organizations and people in our lives for authority. Authority on what we believe because of the information provided, authority in how we live. We think about the authority given to us by parents, think about the authority given to that we experience through government, law enforcement, through our social circles, through our political parties. That is a huge source of authority for us today. Through teachers, through doctors, all kinds of sources of authority. And so what I've been wondering about in this is, how do we determine who we let have authority in our lives? I think that's a really interesting question. Because right now we're letting people have authority in our lives who tell us what we want to hear. It's called confirmation bias, and we are really struggling as a people right now to listen to authorities, to give authority to anybody that tells us something different, that tells us something that we don't already believe. And yet, this is exactly what Jesus does in the Sermon on the Mount. He is telling people something that is very different, at least in some aspects, than what they have learned from their legal experts and from their religious leaders. And the people, though, are recognizing this authority that he has in doing so. My guess is this has to do with divine intervention, that this is God's authority coming through very clearly in Jesus' words. And as we talked about on Sunday, now that we've heard all these words, how are we to live? What actions will we take in our lives? How will we let this authority from Jesus impact what we do on a day-to-day basis? And I think that's the question we are faced with again and again and again in our modern day life is, to what do we allow to have authority in our lives? And how do we live our lives based on that authority? I know that what we need to be giving authority to in our life is to Jesus, over and above all the other authorities. And Jesus is the authority by which we judge all our other authorities. If the authorities in our lives are telling us anything other than love for neighbor, love for God, justice for all people, radical hospitality, prayer for enemy, if we are hearing from our other authorities in our lives anything but these things, anything but what Jesus has put forward in the Sermon on the Mount, I think we have to rethink those authorities. That's a big thing to ponder, isn't it? So I will leave you with that. Think about the authorities in your life and how they compare to the authority that we view in Jesus Christ. Have a wonderful day. Stay warm. Pray for spring. See you on Sunday. Bye.